Many wonder if Pope Francis might be the false prophet or the last pope mentioned in Christian prophecies. Some Catholics believe he fits this role. So, let's dive into the video to know whether he is a false prophet or not. Some Catholics believe Pope Francis could be the last pope, as prophesied by Saint Malachy, an ancient Catholic saint. Saint Malachy lived in Ireland in 1140 AD and made a set of prophecies about the future popes. He predicted there would be 112 popes after his contemporary, Pope Celestine III. According to Malachy, the final pope would be called Petrus Romanus, or Peter the Roman, and his reign would coincide with Judgment Day. This prophecy remained hidden until 1590, when it was first published. Recently, Pope Francis has gained attention as some believe he fulfills Malachy's prophecy as the 112th pope. Saint Malachy's prophecies have been a source of discussion and debate for centuries, and they resurfaced with Pope Benedict XVI's resignation. People often refer to a list of quotes and events during his papacy to understand why some are concerned about Pope Francis. These quotes and incidents have been reported in mainstream news sources, and you can easily verify them through Google searches. While these concerns exist, it's essential to remember that interpretations of prophecies vary, and faith in Jesus Christ should remain the foundation of one's beliefs. Instances defining Pope Francis as a false prophet. There are several instances that some people consider as evidence that Pope Francis is a false prophet. In 2013, Pope Benedict XVI announced his resignation, and shortly after, lightning struck the St. Peter's Dome. In his first speech, Pope Francis jokingly asked God for forgiveness for being elected. Some saw this as a bad omen. Masonic lodges congratulated him and said things would change drastically. He once said he wanted chaos and trouble in the dioceses. Pope Francis also interpreted the miracle of Jesus multiplying bread and fish as a mere act of sharing, not a miracle. Pope Francis stated that even atheists who do good can be redeemed, which raised eyebrows. He also made an unusual analogy, comparing the Holy Spirit to an apostle of Babel. He made some controversial remarks about the Virgin Mary, suggesting she might have felt deceived. Further, in 2014, Pope Francis hosted the first ever Muslim and Jewish prayers and Quran readings at the Vatican, which some found surprising. He sent an iPhone message to evangelicals through prosperity gospel preacher Kenneth Copeland. During a ceremony, his peace doves were attacked by birds. Pope Francis made statements that raised questions about his language. He accidentally used a strong curse word. He suggested that the Catholic Church should not dismiss gay marriage and compared Islamic terrorists to Christian fundamentalists. He also spoke about interfaith meetings and baptizing aliens. When Pope Francis arrived in Jordan, an earthquake occurred near the border with Israel. He met with televangelists Joel Osteen and Kenneth Copeland at the Vatican. He believed in the compatibility of evolution and creation and prayed in Istanbul's Blue Mosque, standing next to a Muslim leader. Next, in 2015, Pope Francis claimed that lost souls do not go to hell, which contradicts traditional Catholic doctrine. He made jokes about the crucifixion of Jesus and suggested that Jesus begged his parents for forgiveness. He met with a transgender individual known as the Devil's Daughter. He also expressed doubts and questions about why children suffer, saying there are no easy answers. Pope Francis conducted a mass in Paraguay, where at least 14 people were bitten by snakes. He spoke about Jesus' youthful disobedience and suggested that Jesus had to ask forgiveness from Mary and Joseph. He admitted to not having answers about why children suffer and pointed to the crucifix as the response. Pope Francis made a statement about the Holy Spirit creating differences among churches, likening the Spirit to an apostle of Babel. Twice in 2015, Pope Francis made a peculiar statement to a group of youth during a visit to Nairobi, Kenya. He shared that he always carries a rosary to pray and the history of God's failure. He repeated this sentiment in New York, saying that Jesus' life ended in failure on the cross. Some found these statements unusual, suggesting a different perspective on faith. In 2016, Pope Francis released a video promoting his prayer intentions, which featured various religious symbols, including Muslim prayer beads, a Buddha statue, and a menorah. But notably, there was no cross. He also implied that John the Baptist doubted Jesus as the Messiah, questioned the Christian faith of a US presidential candidate, and praised an advocate for abortion rights. Pope Francis made controversial comparisons between Islamic conquest and Jesus' words in the Gospel of St. Matthew. He referred to Mother Earth as the giver of life, taught that Jesus knew temptation in himself, elevated St. Mary Magdalene's memorial to the rank of an apostle, and asked for forgiveness from the gay community on behalf of the Church. He also linked the idea of speaking about Islamic violence to Catholic violence. Further, Pope Francis emphasized building a society centered on the human person, discouraged convincing others of one's faith, and condemned inequality as the greatest evil. He attributed weakness and a bad memory to God, suggesting that God was unjust with his son. There were reports that he mentioned possibly splitting the Catholic Church. In 2017, Pope Francis made some significant moves, including appointing a Protestant pastor as the editor of the Argentinian Holy See's newspaper. He stated that Jesus served all and gained authority through service. However, he recorded a Super Bowl video message without mentioning God, which raised eyebrows. Pope Francis controversially denied the existence of Islamic terrorism and allowed seminarians to leave if they disagreed with him. He also seemed to downplay Jesus' stance on divorce. Pope Francis taught that Jesus made himself the devil, stated that God cannot be God without man, and appointed a pro-abortion theologian to the Pontifical Academy for Life. He declared that the Vatican II liturgical reform was irreversible, but claimed that the most minor sins are those of the flesh, in an unusual remark about the Holy Trinity. He joked that they argue behind closed doors while portraying unity externally, quotes from Pope Francis.